Alrighty, so I'm going to assume you can hear me. I don't know how this is going to work. I thought I'd try to go out and be like a real person and go out in public, and it's a lot noisier in public than I remember it being. But in any case, we're going to talk about section 2.1, and 2.1 is the basics of functions and their graphs. Basics of functions and their graphs. Alright, so now we're going to introduce two vocabulary words to get started here. The first one, in fact, you should be pretty familiar with both of them. The first one is domain, and the second one is range. Alright, so now whenever we talk about some kind of a domain, when we talk about domain, what I really mean, I don't know what your official book definition is, but what we actually mean is all the x's, or all the x values. So whenever I talk about domain, I want to talk about all the x values. When I talk about range, I want to talk about all the y's. That means all the y values. So remember, whenever you're plotting something, you have an x, y coordinate pair. So all these points would be the domain. Blah, blah, blah. All these points here would be the domain, and all these points here would be the range. Just like if you plot something on a little graph, anything along here is the x-axis, so this is the domain. Anything along here is the domain, and anything along here is the range. Got it? Super duper fun, okay? Alright, so here's a graph, and let's practice. Say I've got a graph looking like this, and this is, this will be numbers, not numbers. Sorry, somebody's talking about something strange next to me. Hours spent studying. Alright, so we'll say hours spent studying. And along the x-axis, I'll have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And say I've got a half an hour, and 1 hour, and 1.5 hours, and 2 hours, and 2.5 hours, and 3 hours. Alright. So let's say that on Monday, it's the beginning of the week, I'm all super stoked. I think, for real, I'm going to study this time. And I study for an hour and a half. On Tuesday, that kind of took it out of me, but I'm still reasonably motivated, so I'm going to study for 1 hour. I have a test on Thursday, so Wednesday I'm going to study for 3 hours because I'm totally nuts. After I take my test on Thursday, I'm pretty much exhausted, but, you know, I'm still going to give it a shot, but I really can only make about a half an hour. And on Friday, let's be honest, I'm not studying at all. Okay. So I'm not studying at all on Friday. So let's talk about what this looks like. If I wanted to write this as a coordinate pair, I would say, okay, well, on Monday, I'm studying for 1.5 hours. Right? And on Tuesday, I'm studying for 1 hour. On Wednesday, I'm studying for 3 hours. On Thursday, I'm studying for a half an hour. And on Friday, like we said, I'm not really studying at all. Alright? So in this completely in no way contrived example, I want to talk about what the domain is. The domain is all the x values. The domain is anything that happens along this line. So any x value, anything that's in the x position is considered an element of the domain. So our domain here is going to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Okay. Now, for the range, remember the range is all the y values, anything that's in a y position. So anything that comes up along this side. So anything that's in the y position of that coordinate pair. 1.5, 1, 3, 0.5, and 0. Now, it doesn't really matter if we list these in order because we're just listing them. We don't really care what specific order we put them in. We just care that somewhere along the way that we've listed all the elements. Okay? Thank you. So, let's try another example. Say we've got the points 1, 3, 2, 5, 3, comma, negative 6. And these are my points. Now again, if I want the domain, I want all the x values, so all the x values, all the values in the x position. I'm just not repeating myself very well. All the values in the x position. So for my domain, my values are 1, 2, and 3. Now for my range, again, range means all the values in the y position. So all the values in the y position is this one, and this one. So I've got 3, 5, and negative 6. So that's my range. Good? Good. Try another one. Make sure you got it. Say I've got 0, 10, 1, 20, 2, 30, and 3, 20. 320. Good? Now again, if I'm listing my domain, that's all the x values, so all the values that are in the x position. I'm going to do arrows, that's probably cleaner. All the values in the x position, so 0, 1, 2, and 3. Now can you come up with the range? Thinking about it? So range is all the y values, all the values in the y position. So I've got 10, 20, 30. Now I've got here 20 again, but I don't have to relist it because I've already listed it once. It's already listed right here. So you don't have to relist elements. Another way to say that is to list each item only once. List each item only once. Alright, you'll be in good shape. Alright, so hopefully you're pretty comfortable doing that in terms of, what's it called? In terms of points. Now let's look about what it takes to actually do this, though, in terms of graphs, okay? So say I've got a graph here, and I've got a point over here at negative 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, here at 3, 0, and let's see, where's the other good one? We'll have one here at 2, negative 2, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, here at 6, 0. And I have a graph that connects all these points. Actually, be a little bit more clear. Oops. Excuse me. And like that. Now, if I ask you for the domain, this is what not to do. Got it? Not to do. What not to do. Don't just go, okay, so here's that x value, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. So it's negative 1, 1, 2, 3, and 6. And I'm done. No. You say, well, hey, you're just totally taking me for something ridiculous here because that's what you just said. You just said write down all the x values. Yep, that's exactly what I said. I said write down all. That's a lot of L's. I'm really serious. All the x values. So not just the ones that are listed. Not just the ones that are listed. Oh, I'm running out of room. Not just the ones that are listed. So these here that are listed are just listed for reference points. But honestly, I mean, this here's a point, and 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 all these are points. You've got to list all those points to make this work. Okay? So if you want to do this effectively, you can use what I call the smush method. Yes, it's my smush method. Basically pretend this is a funny bug graph, and you've got a giant shoe. There's my shoelaces. And you're going to smush the graph. Yes, I know it's dumb, but hopefully you'll remember it. I'm going to smush the graph, and if I smush the graph, and this is the ground, if my x-axis is the ground, if I smush the graph, this part is going to come down here, it's going to smush to here, and it's going to smush to here. Oops. All this stuff down here is going to smush up. This guy's going to smush. This guy here, he's going to smush down to here. That graph, if I smushed it like a bug, it would smush to here. Does that make sense? You see how that works? Let me erase my shoe because it's kind of hideous. I apologize. This is what you get. And I lost my line. Okay, so I have smushed my graph to where now I can actually pull the domain off. If I smush my graph, I can see that all the x values, all the valid x values go from -1 to 6, and it includes those endpoints. So now we're going to use the stuff that we did in section 1.7. We're going to say I go from -1 to 6, and I include the endpoints. So that's how you find the domain for a graph. Is you look and you see, okay, if I squished it on the x-axis, what would it look like? Okay? Now, we're going to use the much lauded mosquito slat method. And no, that's not really what it's called, but it's mine. So if I've got two giant hands, these are my hands, and I go swack, because this graph is an annoying mosquito, and I'm going to smush it across the y-axis. It's going to smush and look like this if a mosquito slapped it. See, I can't show it to you, but just use my brilliant pictures as a way to visualize what's going on. I'm going to smush it across to the y-axis. So if I squish this across to the y-axis, where does it go from? It comes down here, it starts at -2, and it goes up to 2. So that means for the range, remember the y values on the y-axis, it goes from -2 to +2, and it includes the endpoints. So I'm going to erase these because they're also quite hideous. So that's what you're looking at. You've got your domain, and you've got your range. So I had a couple of caveats, and I'm going to rewrite them here. I'm going to write them in red, actually. Ah! What happened? Okay. So here's warnings. Write these somewhere on your paper that you're going to see them, because you're going to forget. Don't just look at the endpoints. I mean, don't just look at the points that are listed. Right. Don't just look at the points that are listed. Also, and I said it a minute ago, don't just look at the endpoints. And you see that happen sometimes too. So don't just look at the endpoints. Okay? So don't just say, well, I go from here to here, so if I smush it, it only smushes here. Okay? You have to go from as high as it goes to as far down as it goes. So even though this is like a midpoint, it's not an endpoint, it still counts. So don't just look at these 2 points here and say, oh, well, it goes from 0 to 2. I mean, you've got to look at the lowest point that it gets at all the way to the highest point that it gets at to do this effectively. Okay? So, just be aware that that's usually where I see the mistakes being made, is people who are looking at the endpoints and not just, doing a straight or honest, okay, if I smush this, what is it going to look like? Okay? So let's try looking at another example. Okay. So say I've got this graph coming along here, and I've got a point at -2, 1, and it's going to be an open circle point. And it's going to come up to 0, 2, and 1, 2, 3. It's going to come down to 3, 0, and it's going to go across to 5, 4. Okay, so I've got my graph that goes meow, meow, like that. So I want you to look again and determine if you can figure out what the domain and the range of this function are. Okay. So I really want you to think about this. Remember what it's not. It is not -2, 0, 3, and 5. Don't just look at the points listed. You want to really look at what's going to look like if you smush this. So if you haven't already started, go ahead and pause this and confirm that you can do this independently. And if you can't, that's fine, but you need to know what you do understand and what you don't. And trying to work ahead on your own is a good way to do that. Alright, so remember, the domain is the x-axis. This is if I smush it down on the x-axis. So I'm going to smush it this direction. So it's going to look, if I smushed it, it's going to look like this. It's going to go from, it's going to go from -2 over here, -2 to 5, but it's not going to include that endpoint because it was an open circle. It will include this endpoint because it was a closed circle. Got it? Now for the range, again, I'm going to go smush them this direction, like that. If I smush it this direction, this guy is going to smush to here. Everybody else is going to smush along here and smush to there. Alrighty? So I'm going to go from -1 all the way up to 4 and include that last endpoint. Okay? So make sure you're getting this. Next example. Let's take a look at, say I've got this kind of a function. It doesn't really matter too much. I'm just going to tell you it starts here and goes like this. Alright? So let's look at what the domain and the range are. So again, pause this if you can. Go try to do this on your own so you can get it to make sense. So the domain, I'm going to smush this down to the x-axis. I'm going to start here. This guy's going to smush down, smush down. Now this arrow here means it goes on forever and ever. Goes on forever in this direction. So since it goes on forever to the right, that means that this line here also goes on forever and ever to the right. This goes on and on forever to the right and up. And because it goes on forever and ever to the right, this line right here, my domain line, also has to go to the right forever and ever. So it starts at 0, it includes the endpoint, and it goes on forever and ever, so it goes to infinity. Remember with infinity, we always use parentheses on plus and minus infinity, because you can never actually get to infinity. Because you say, I'm an infinity, and the next guy says, I'm an infinity plus 1. If you had weird friends like me in kindergarten, maybe that's how you played with each other, besting each other with the biggest number you could think of. Anyway, you can never actually get there. So that's why you always have to use parentheses, because the whole idea behind a bracket is like that's a solid ending point. That's a foundation. We can actually hit that point, but we can never actually hit infinity. So now look at the exact same thing for the range. We're going to smush along the y-axis, and if we smush this guy along the y-axis, he's going to start down here, and he's going to go up. And just like this guy goes up and up and up forever and ever and ever, so must our range go up and up and up forever and ever. So therefore, our range goes from 0 all the way up to infinity. Super fun? Alright, if you thought that was fun, wait till you see the next one. So take a look at this one. So we got this super fancy function. It's going to start down here at 0, -2. It's going to hit the axes or the x-axis at 2, 0, and -2, 0. It's going to go up like this, over like that. Ooh, that was terrible. Excuse me. And over like that. Now see if you can figure out the domain and the range. So like I said, pause it if you can, make sure you can do this, make sure you can figure this out. This is probably one of the most missed problems. So this is something you definitely want to be aware of, because it's probably going to show up on a test. This is one of the most missed problems. So again, remember, you do not want to miss, you don't want to list the individual points. Anytime you see a graph, you're not going to be wanting to list the individual points. So let's look here. I'm going to do our smush down. Remember our giant shoe stepping on it? We're going to smush it onto this x-axis. Now what most people who get this wrong are going to say is they're going to say that it goes from -2 to 2. When you say that it goes from -2 to 2, you're only including this part here. Oops, you're not including anything. You're only including this part here. But what about this guy? This guy's included. This guy goes up and up forever and ever to the up and to the right. Goes up and to the right. So since it goes up and to the right, it better, your domain, better go to the right forever and ever. And just like over here, it goes up and to the left. So just like that, your domain better go to the left forever and ever. So what you have is you have a domain that goes from -infinity, that looks like an 8, from -infinity to +infinity. So I'm going from -infinity, +infinity, and that's my domain. Now for my range, remember my little kind of mosquito slap, I'm going to smush the graph onto the y-axis. So this goes up forever and ever, this corner here, and this corner here goes up and up forever and ever. So my range better go up and up forever and ever. It comes down, it comes down, it comes down, and it's going to stop here. As low as I get here is as low as my range is going to go. I never get below -2. I never get below -2. So I'm going to go from -2 all the way up to infinity. And that's your, not brief, your most fabulous introduction then to domain and range.